I work for the Scottish Procurement Commercial Directorate, and what I look after at the moment is best practice and the pre-award systems that are there to help you with your procurements. Now, on the 18th of April this year, major changes to procurement rules came into effect when we had the implementation of the Procurement Reform Act, but also the EU directives. Work's been going on at the moment to explain the implications of this legislation to everybody, buyers and suppliers, and to communicate the changes out there. Now, my presentation is reasonably short because, let's face it, EU directives and procurement reform acts aren't the most exciting thing here. It's not Batman versus Superman. This is more of the sort of the detailed interest there. But we have a clear focus in Scotland to focus government and public services on creating a more successful country with opportunities for all sizes of suppliers. Scott mentioned there, we have a spend of £11 billion in the public sector. Now, this can be a great lever to actually bring through economic recovery. Before I go on to an overview of the changes, I'd quickly like to briefly cover our Scottish focus on procurement. Some of the key outcomes we are looking to achieve are promoting jobs and growth, we're encouraging innovation, we're looking at boosting training and apprenticeships, and also looking for small and medium enterprises to have an easier way to market, along with third sector and supported businesses. Spent wisely, that £11 billion can make that big effect. It means a move away from the traditional race to the bottom for the cheapest price. And what we're trying to do is create a model that puts procurement at the heart of Scotland's economic recovery. Like all good ideas, it's a very simple concept. Like a lot of good ideas, wasn't mine. It means looking at sustainable outcomes, not outputs. It brings together a whole load of public sector bodies all together to start looking at how we can have government-led procurement but public sector owned. And again, we're developing partnerships with businesses and key stakeholders. The Scottish model of procurement is looking to make procurement business-friendly and socially responsible. It sees procurement not as a back office area, but more as an integral part of policy implementation and development, and my area, service delivery. When I first started working in e-commerce 14 years ago, procurement was a poor neighbour. It didn't have a seat at the directors' tables. It was tagged onto finance. This is all hopefully being changed now, and since the Reform Act has come in and the reform programme started in 2006, that has all developed. Economic benefit is just much broader than just simple costs. So the Scottish model is based on this value for money triangle here, where we're looking at quality, cost and sustainability. The slide shows that triangle and the strategic objectives of our reform agenda, namely delivery of savings and benefits that go with them, maximising efficiency and collaboration, improving supplier access to contracts, especially for small businesses, and embedding sustainability at the heart of all we do. By building on the growing practice within procurement, these are the principles we've enshrined in the Reform Act. This slide just briefly shows the dates that were key to get into new legislation. I won't dwell on these. What happened is the EU procurement directives came in 2014. We were doing the Reform Act. What we did was consult. We went out, consulted, we had the results of the consultation, they were published, and they all went forward to actually pulling together our approach. Together, the Act and the regulations will provide a statutory foundation for the Scottish model of procurement, simplifying, standardising and streamlining procedures for both businesses and public bodies. Now, I know that sounds very trite, saying simplifying, standardising and streamlining. It's much more difficult in practice, as we know. This is what we've been doing with our guidance, trying to address that and make it simpler for people. We made a deliberate decision to bring together both the Reform Act and the EU directives at the same time, really to make sure people felt the pain just the one time, rather than bringing one set of legislation and then have to jig it again later on. The EU directives gave us, every country, a certain amount of flexibility on how to implement the regulations. So that's why our consultation process took that into account, so we could make sure it fitted right for Scotland. What it does mean, we've now got in place sustainable and socially responsible purchasing at the heart of the process. And we've got improved outcomes, simplification, improved access for businesses, and transparency. What I'd like to do very briefly then is just look at the key changes of the Act and the directives. It puts a statutory framework round the Scottish model, and it sets out ministers' expectations for how public bodies will approach procurement, and it strikes a balance between both being business friendly but also socially responsible. The Act itself focuses on a number of general duties on public bodies regarding procurement activities and some specific measured aims at promoting good practice. Again, good practice is key to everything we've been trying to do. It requires community benefit clauses to be considered in major contracts. At the heart of the Act is the sustainable procurement duty. This requires all bodies to consider how contracts can improve economic, social and environmental well-being and also reduce inequality. How SMEs like yourselves, the third sector and supported businesses can be involved and how innovation can be promoted. This turns on its head the traditional approach where sustainability was considered right at the end. Now it puts it at the heart of the procurement journey. And talking of the procurement journey, there is a stand outside for the procurement journey within Scottish Government, manned by Colette and her team, where they will cover the steps that go through placing a contract and making sure everything's been considered so everything is legally covered. It not only makes sure you're statutory correct, it also gives out best practice. We're also working on a supplier journey as well on supplier tools. So if you've got any requirements, then please go and see Colette's team and let them know what you think would help you have best practice when you're doing your procurements. Just like to cover finally some key changes in the Act. These are things that have come in that will make the biggest difference. First of all, the use of Public Contract Scotland, the national advertising portal. That is now mandated for all contracting authorities for any contracts above the £50,000 threshold. So they will advertise every opportunity there. It's a one-stop shop even. Also, they have to publish all their awards there, so you'll see who was awarded the contract. If you're not on Public Contract Scotland, if you haven't got a PCS registration, you will have a very limited chance of getting business with the public sector because mainly you'll miss the opportunities when they come up. So get registered. We've got a Public Contract Scotland stand there. The team will guide you through how to not only just register, but make sure you've got your full profile there with the correct keywords to make sure you have the best opportunity of attracting business. What will happen is when the contracting authority goes out, it knows what it's purchasing. It then puts out the contract notice with its keywords. You will then get an email alert to tell you that opportunity is there. Whether you respond or not, entirely up to yourselves, but it's there. Secondly, we've got the ESPD. It's a European Single Procurement Document, Scotland. Now what's happened here is the ESPD has been brought in by Europe and it replaces the PQQ. So from the 18th of April onwards, suppliers don't have to complete PQQs. Instead, it's the ESPD. What the ESPD does, it gives you a whole set of questions and answers, and it's mainly yes or no to start with, but it also gives you exclusion criteria and selection criteria for you to complete. So for all procurements above the OJEU threshold, they must use the ESPD. Our advice in Scotland is for anything above 50,000, you should use it to standardise our approach towards procurement. Later on today, Jill Joy is going to do a presentation on ESPD, so I won't steal her thunder, and she's going to cover that in more detail as to what's involved in the whole process. As I said, we've got sustainability, a clear focus on outcomes through the procurement process. And what it wants is what public bodies must consider what sustainability they're going to build into their contracts. We also covered blacklisting. By making a breach of the blacklisting regulations a mandatory exclusion ground, we've now taken a firm approach in Scotland as to how to approach blacklisting. Companies can get themselves off that list if they've taken the relevant steps, but initially if you've been in breach of those regulations, that's it, you're excluded from the approach. Community benefits. Any contract now which is worth over £4 million for its whole of its lifespan must build in community benefits and have them considered. So that is now coming into effect from yesterday, from the 1st of June. So again, it's trying to make sure we're balancing procurement between cost and giving something back. Another key thing here is dividing contracts into lots. Contracting authorities must now consider, when they've got a large requirement, of breaking it down into smaller lots, hopefully to encourage smaller businesses to bid for the smaller lots that are there. If they don't break it down, they must put in their notice the reason why they felt it wasn't appropriate. I mentioned PCS. Something else on PCS and has changed is contract registers. Every public sector body now must publish an internet-based contract register, which is viewable by the public. On PCS, there's actually a tab that says, under the organisation's name, contract register. They don't have to use a PCS version. A lot of councils have it on their own websites, or they can have a link to it if it's held elsewhere. But if you can't find an organisation's contract register, ask them, where is it? Again, it gives you an idea of what business that is already in place and when those contracts expire. Also on PCS, you'll find there is there's a framework for contracts coming up and going forward. If you have a look on that, you'll see with the Centres of Expertise what they're going to be advertising in the next couple of years. So their forward plan is outlined there. Some key dates just to consider. The first couple have gone because we've gone past the April and June. But what else is coming up is in December, 31st of December, all contracting authorities must publish their procurement strategies. They must make it viewable so you can see it. 18th of April 2017, we're talking about going electronic, and central bodies must carry out their procurements electronically. 18th of April 2018, the ESPD, which can be used in a paper format at present, has to be electronic and only electronic. They won't accept paper versions anymore after that. 18th of October 2018 is when everything in procurement across the EU has to be dealt with electronically. So some key dates to consider. Finally, if you want any more information, as I say, we've got colleagues at the stands through in the other room who can give you some information there. We've got this statutory procurement notes which are published on the Scottish website. SDP have got training courses and they've got their own website which covers it. And as I say, if you go to the Scottish Government website, you'll find some more information there. So thank you very much for your time. I know it's not the most interesting subject, but I didn't notice anyone nod off, so I think call that a result. Thank you.